10 years ago, food delivery apps were just a side option. Today, they process between 8.5 and 9.5 million orders every single day. I'm sitting down with Wei Han, author of one of the most detailed reports on food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia. In this episode, we take a step back to understand this transformation, how we got here, what's really happening beneath the surface, and where it's heading next. If you want to understand food delivery platforms in 20 minutes, this is The Conversations. Welcome to the Impulso podcast. Let's start at the beginning. If we rewind for like 10 years, food delivery is still very niche. And today, for most of the people, it's routine. What actually changed structurally to make that happen rather than people just changing their habits?
So I think there are a couple of reasons. It actually started mainly because of, let's say, you have the macroeconomics is improving. So a lot of the things like GDP per capita, it's growing for most of the Southeast Asian markets. And you also have, let's say, urbanization happening. So you have more people starting to move towards the cities. And then because of that, you create two things. Number one, there is more demand for food services, not even just food delivery, but food in general. And there's also you create a supply because now you have more people going into the cities. They are trying to look for work there. So this kind of builds out the foundation to, let's say, these people could potentially be your delivery riders. So because of that, you can see a lot of the food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia starting to take off. You have Foodpanda being one of the first few, and then subsequently you have, like, let's say, Grab, you have Lyman, you have Shopee Food coming out. And then afterwards, I'm pretty sure a lot of us remember this period, COVID hit.
COVID-19, the disease that defined our lives in 2020.
2020 is now the deadliest year in U.S. history.
Since late March.
So there were a lot of restrictions. So people can't go out to eat, but let's say merchants, their offline business got disrupted. So this is the point when a lot of the food delivery habits that we see today started building. So now that a lot of these merchants, they don't have offline traffic, they would have to rely heavily on the food delivery platforms to have their products delivered to a lot of the consumers. And because of these, you can see that there are a lot of investments going into by these platforms into trying to offer better services, trying to have better, let's say, support for their riders, because you will have to rely on them in order to deliver food. So there's the platform investment side. And at the same time, during the COVID period, we do see some of the governments actually stepping up to provide, let's say, certain incentives. For example, I think Thailand has the 50-50. So the most recent 50-50 is actually a continuation from the 50-50 that was introduced back during COVID. So those helps to support the consumers in terms of subsidizing a part of their consumption purchases. And then you also have governments like those in Singapore, which is more targeted towards helping the merchants to offset like some of their delivery fees. So it's less burdensome for them to fork out a lot of the cost from their own pocket. So with this ecosystem starting to grow, and then you see, like, let's say, consumers themselves are slowly starting to accept food delivery a lot better, and more of them are starting to use it out of daily habit. So all this actually forms kind of like a flywheel. So let's say you have more merchants, you tend to have more offerings on the platform. Then afterwards, you have more users wanting to come. And with more users, platforms can play with a lot more other initiatives. They can use this demand to go attract more merchants, form deeper partnership with merchants, or like they can actually hire a lot more riders, because now that demand is there is a sort of like a guaranteed volume for a lot of the riders to make sure that they have sufficient orders to even deliver. So I would say that the entire development of the Southeast Asian food delivery system is not just consumers having the habit of ordering more, but rather it's a lot of different stakeholders putting in their efforts to make do with this food delivery becoming a norm in the region.
Your report shows very strong growth, not because people are spending more per order, but because they are ordering more often. What do you actually mean about that?
So if you look at what contributes to growth, right? We look at it in terms of three main angles. So number one is the average order value, which is how much they spend per order. And then afterwards, we look at the frequency that they are ordering food delivery at. And then lastly, we look at the number of users actually ordering from this food delivery platform. So for the past year, what we've observed is that a lot of the platforms are trying to push out affordability-focused initiatives. For example, they are launching a lot of discounts, or they are offering like free delivery or like special meals that is generally cheaper than their typical menu offerings. So these initiatives technically also help to drive the order value down. So the average order value trending downwards, it's a general trend that we are seeing. But what this affordability initiative bring about is that not only because now it's more affordable, number one, people tend to order more frequently. So that's what you're actually talking about. So this group of users could be existing food delivery users now that things are more affordable. I can instead of ordering just once per day, once or twice per week, I can afford to do it like almost once every single day. So this drives up the frequency. At the same time, you also have another group of users that has never actually ordered with these food delivery platforms before because they deem it too expensive as compared to, let's say, I'll just go downstairs to buy my food. So this bunch of users adds on to the number one, the frequency of order, and number two, you're also expanding the actual user base. So overall, there is a synergistic effect when you have more users and also when you have increased order frequency, which despite having a much lower average order value, the overall GMV is actually growing quite significantly. So that is the current stage that we are seeing a lot of the platforms and a lot of and how the general Southeast Asian market is like. But this was actually not always the case because we are at a stage where the platforms are relatively mature. So initially, when the platforms first started out, what they're trying to compete on is that they want to get as many users as they can. So they use the they try to use affordability initiative. They try to throw a lot of discounts, vouchers to get people. So that phase, the AOV, it's also trending on the lower side. But then afterwards, after they have gained certain scale, now they're under the pressure to become more profitable. So they cut down on subsidies, and that's when the average order value increases because the core user base who frequently use these food delivery apps are the ones who are there regardless of whether there's subsidies or not. So this group of users, they stayed behind and they still continue to spend. So now without all these subsidies, vouchers, the AOV actually increases. But at the current stage right now, all the platforms are sort of back in the stage of growth mindset. They want to grow further. They want to see how much more market share they can get, or in fact, many of them are actually either public or going public, so they're under investor pressure. It's like, hey, your profitability seems to be doing decent. How about we grow more? Maybe we can have more opportunities in the future. So that's where the switch happens. So I think in Southeast Asia, we would constantly be in this stage of fluctuating average order value because most of the times, all this platform strategy and their focus they are always changing. So the low AOV for now might not persist as long as, let's say, the platform one day decides to, okay, I'm going to switch back into profitability mode. I want to push for higher average order value for my customers.
Okay, so Grab now has owned more than 50% of Southeast Asia market share. Is that dominance mainly because they have better executions or the advantage of being bundled into something bigger?
You can look at it in a couple of different perspectives. So number one, Grab has a lot of offerings. They have their ride hailing, they have food delivery, they have their Grab Mart, and many more. And secondly is because Grab has a relatively large user base. They are in all 6 of the major Southeast Asian markets. So what this does is that when you have, let's say, number one, a large user base, you tend to be able to capture a lot more value out of these users as compared to someone with a much smaller user base. Number two, because let's say as a user of Grab, when I am in, let's say, Singapore, I order food delivery. If I go to another country, I'm already used to using Grab Food for food delivery. I can still continue to use this platform. So there is this continuity across the 6 Southeast Asian markets. And what this actually benefits, it's also because if, let's say, I am a tourist coming to Southeast Asia, I can also just rely on one main platform, which is Grab, to settle my food. I can use it to settle my ride hailing, especially to and fro many different attractions. So this gives Grab as a platform a very high use case. So I think you can see that tourists might be a very small part in the grand scheme of things, but the logic is still the same because I am such a high usage app and I spend across all 6 markets. It is a lot easier for me as a platform to offer similar offerings to all of my customers. I just have to make minor adjustments to fit the local context to better serve, let's say, Thai consumers, to better serve, let's say, Vietnamese consumers. So that's a very big advantage that Grab has as compared to a lot of the other platforms. But that being said, you also do have platforms, for example, like Shopee Food, which leverages the main Shopee app, which is also a major e-commerce platform that is used throughout Southeast Asia. So the strategy play is slightly different because even though Shopee Food can leverage some sort of traffic from Shopee itself, Shopee Food is not being offered in a lot of countries, and at the moment they are still relatively small because back then the focus for the C Group, which is Shopee's parent company, was not so much on food delivery. It's more of in the more recent years, that's when they're starting to ramp up, especially given that now Shopee is facing certain competitive pressures from other platforms in the region. So for Grab itself, key advantage, number one, high usage frequency from all the different offerings. And number two, they do have a very large user base across Southeast Asia.
Your report uses the phrase demand orchestrators. What does this actually mean?
What we meant is that platforms are moving away from transaction channels to demand orchestrators. So if I were to draw an analogy for you, let's take a look at the e-commerce side. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of the traditional e-commerce platforms, we as consumers, what we do is that we roughly have a sense what we want to buy. We go on to the e-commerce platform, we search, then afterwards we compare the price or maybe where it's being delivered from, how much is my delivery fee, and then afterwards we buy it and then we just wait for the product to come. But then now you have players like TikTok there trying to feed you a lot of content saying that buy this, this thing has changed my life, etc. Mm-hmm. It builds that the product idea, or it builds that sense of impulsivity in you. At least it plants a seed in saying that, okay, I remember this product. Maybe one day when I see this again, I might want to buy it, or I see the video, I'll buy it now. So a lot of these food delivery platform companies are also trying to shift towards more of the demand side. So previously when we buy food, what we do is like, oh, I want to eat noodles today. I go on to food delivery app, I search noodles, whatever makes sense for me, I buy it. But then now we have a lot of platforms trying to offer the discovery mode of things. So for example, Grab itself, they have this tab that is called Discovery. When I go into Grab, I can click on it and then they will show me that what are the other people writing about this particular food, and then maybe I can order it on Grab. Or you also have players like Shopee Food. They are doing live streams for some of, let's say, their vouchers, and now even TikTok is also working with some of the F&B merchants to push out vouchers. So this actually creates like a time gap, in the sense that I can, because now I'm seeing it, I see the vouchers, the prices are attractive, I'm inclined to buy it first, and then afterwards I redeem it. So in a sense, it kind of reshapes the psyche of a lot of the consumers. Instead of going from, I think of, I'm hungry now, I will go on to the app, I buy my food. But rather now it's like, oh, I'm bored. Maybe as I'm scrolling through some of these discovery pages, be it on Grab, be it on TikTok, be it on Shopee Food, then I come across certain merchants, certain cuisines, I remember it, and then during meal times, I'm more inclined to actually go and buy. So we no longer just use, like, let's say, some of these food delivery platforms as a form of they just deliver food for me, but rather now I have, maybe they are trying to start to build the consumer habit, as to say that I would actively be exposed to a lot of the food options that keeps me thinking of, oh, maybe I should eat this because I saw a particular post. And then during meal times, I actually make the effort to go and buy it off the platforms itself. So there is a shift from being purely just a delivery platform, now that they're trying to control, or they're trying to coordinate what a lot of the users are starting to see. So they are trying to own the entire journey instead of just the ending part.
So you mentioned about TikTok. So where's TikTok in this whole app delivery platform?
So for TikTok, what they themselves do not have the fulfillment capabilities to deliver food as compared to Grab, Shopee Food, Lineman, etc. So what they do is that they make use of their content platform. They have, like, let's say, merchants trying to do like live stream or do short videos, and then they would tag there's a product tag there that you can buy vouchers of it. So these vouchers are sort of considered local services, because you would have to go down to, let's say, the certain stores for you to redeem them. So it's kind of different from food delivery. And this is technically just one way of TikTok trying to monetize its traffic, because what TikTok has that many of the other platforms struggle to maintain is that they have a constant flow of users scrolling through the platform. So for local services such as selling food vouchers, drinks vouchers through their platform is just one avenue on top of, let's say, they have their advertising services, on top of, let's say, their e-commerce offerings. So at the moment, I think TikTok has not pushed tremendously into wanting to grow their local services further, because in a sense for them, e-commerce is still a much easier way for them to monetize, because you get the parcels delivered to your house and they work with someone, for example, J&T Express, to have the parcels delivered to you. But we will never know whether one day, if, let's say, TikTok suddenly decides that, okay, I think I might want to invest more in this area, instead of just offering vouchers, maybe I will work with someone, maybe a smaller local logistics fleet, to help me deliver the food. Or who knows, they might even eventually build up their own logistic fleet. So it's really dependent on what TikTok as a platform itself decides whether they want to enter this competition or not, because ultimately food delivery is a pretty asset heavy business. You need your logistics riders, you need to coordinate a lot with the merchants. Yeah,
that is very well explained. Wei An, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.